ability to work towards the same goal and have that collective buy-in is arguably one of the most important aspects of culture. Because if you have everyone fighting and bickering about what direction we're trying to go, then you're not going to have the positive environment that facilitates that outcome. What people have to understand about culture is it's building always, regardless of whether you want it to or not. There is always going to be a good or a bad culture. If you aren't working on making it good, it is going to be bad. That's the thing, there is no on-off switch. It simply is, and how you foster it and cultivate it is going to be the determining factor for the outcome. What is up, YouTube? All right, so little disruption to our usual content, or a little disruption to our usual programming. Last Thursday, I had a grade 2 hamstring tear. I'll go through a bit of that today as to what I believe led to it, and kind of help you understand what not to do to prevent that from happening, or what to do to prevent that happening, and kind of what our protocol is going to be to recover it, repair it, and move on and get back to training. But basically, it's going to be 3 to 4 weeks of minimal load or no load, getting mobility and range of motion back into it, reducing pain, inflammation, and then from there we'll start reintroducing load and getting back to actually strengthening the muscle, and then move back into progressively overloading the tissue. So there'll be a whole protocol to it. As everyone knows, I run through my physio and rehab and my active treatment with tech, and Aaron's all over the protocol and what he wants me to do. So we'll go through that eventually. But yes, that's just going to interrupt our usual leg day programming. What we've got today is going to be an upper volume session. So we're looking at some shoulder work, some back work, and some arms. So relatively a fun session. The old bro in me would have loved this 5-6 years ago. Predominantly doing arm movements for an entire training session, which is cool. Yeah, so that's pretty much going to be the layout for today's session. We'll probably do a little bit of extra shoulder work just because we're behind in volume from having the injury. I pretty much left Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to no training. Tech told me I had to stay off my feet and try and de-escalate the inflammation. So we'll go through that, add a little bit extra stuff in there as well. As for America, that is officially booked in and locked in. So we are going in the middle of August and we'll be back the start of early September. We've got a fair bit planned over there, which is going to be awesome. We've managed to lock in what's going to be our first collegiate American football game, which will be awesome. We've got some big news coming with some podcasts we're going to be on that actually did get locked in. We've got to confirm some details as to what we'll talk about before we kind of announce it. But it's probably by far the biggest podcast that I've officially ever been on, which is exciting for that next level of reach and interaction we want to get to and keep providing information. Yeah, that's pretty much going to be the session today. It's kind of what's going on at the moment. We're back to uni this week, so life gets chaotic again. And we're pretty much going to kick ass and go with that.
It ain't no thing to do my thing, it's what I did the best. I copped that crib and bought 2 chains and then I hid the rest. And it's okay to do your thing, but just don't do the most. I put my friends in that old Benz and took that to the coast. It ain't no thing to do my thing, it's what I do the best. I fill my mattress, pay my taxes, then I blew the rest. And it's okay to do your thing, but just don't do the least. I quit my boss and cooked that sauce and fed that too.
How long into a growth block should I look at dropping food for a cut? Now, important to understand that for a growth block, what we're trying to do, especially by using food, is create an environment that is actually facilitating the growth of tissue. It doesn't happen overnight. A lot of people think that they're going to put on, these drastic or crazy surpluses are going to lead to crazy amounts of muscle gain in a matter of weeks. The reality is muscle growing, or the growth of skeletal muscle mass, is a very slow process. It's going to take a lot of time, it's going to take a lot of food. People rush too quickly in a growth phase to start cutting because they might feel a little bit uncomfortable. Majority of the time, it's when I start to see resistance points in the data that I would look to say, okay, it's time to enter a maintenance phase, or we're going to look at cutting back to improve health markers. We have to look at it as more of a runway of time. How long is the runway that we have in order for us to continue to grow and maximize muscle tissue before the body is going to be less responsive? At a certain point, the more calories we eat, the more fat mass we start to acquire, the body is going to continue to perpetuate that. So if we're getting too fat, the body's prioritizing fat gain, if we're starting to put on too much weight but muscle mass isn't occurring, or the muscle mass isn't quite changing, we need to look at why that's occurring and probably pull back slightly. So for me, it's generally like you'll look around 20 to 24 weeks for most people with a gradual surplus. So usually I will look no more than 20%, but at the same time, if I use weight on a scale as a number, I'm looking 300 to 500 grams per week for a natural athlete, maybe the 500 gram mark per week for an enhanced athlete. That's the upper end that you want to look at before we start to perpetuate fat gain and need to consider why that's happening. So looking too early for a cut phase, just because you're starting to get uncomfortable, is actually going to hold you back more than you realize and interrupt the signaling and the potentiation of muscle growth. So enjoy the fact you get to have large amounts of food, accept the fact you're going to be uncomfortable, and then don't worry about when that cut's going to come. Your coach will tell you and will probably have a plan for it. But at the same time, let's say you get to that 20-week mark and your body's responding quite well. There's no reason to rush to the cut phase early and then end up cutting that signaling short and then missing out on potential gains. The whole idea of bodybuilding is to grow muscle and build your body. Getting on stage too small just because you're scared of putting on some body fat is going to hold you back and prevent you from winning the class.
2 chains and then I hit the rest. And it's okay to do your thing, but just don't do the most. I put my friends in that old Benz and took that to the coast. It ain't no thing to do my thing, it's what I do the best. I fill my mattress, pay my taxes, then I blew the rest.
What is the ideal rep range for hypertrophy? So there used to be this myth that will fly around, you know, that like 3 to 6 reps is for strength and 6 to 15 is for hypertrophy, and then above that is like toning and conditioning, or whatever the myth used to be perpetuated going around, something like that. The reality is, look at the research. You know, we need to look at the evidence as a baseline of data. Hypertrophy, which is a signaling, is a stimulus. We are looking anywhere between 5 to, I believe it was 30 reps, is an acceptable range of training volume as a rep target for the stimulation of hypertrophy to occur. Now, inside that though, there's nuances and caveats that we have to consider, like exercise selection, exercise order, what your training program looks like over the course of the week, what we're trying to achieve and stimulate. So just simply saying like, it's where data can get misconstrued. Just simply saying anywhere from 5 to 30 is a good range to be in. Now, you're not going to go do deadlifts at 80% or 75% of your body weight, of your rep max, and then do 30 reps. It's just not conceivable, it's not gonna happen. So what we need to look at is what we're choosing that rep scheme for and what we're trying to achieve with that program. So for me, a lot of the time, I'll probably work inside that 8 to 12 or 10 to 15 rep targets for a lot of my guys, going through a block specifically trying to stimulate growth. Main reason being, we still wanna work as a close proximity to failure, and we need to be considerate of overall volume and inflammation on joints and muscle tissue. So yes, just because you can go to 30 reps doesn't mean you should. If I'm doing RDLs and someone's trying to do, I've got a 30 rep set, the load and impact that is gonna have on my joints, my lower back, my hips, things like this, that's going to create inflammation and problems over time. So the implementation of those reps starts to add up. So you need to consider what you're choosing that rep target for and what the exercise and order of that exercise is in your program. So I'll usually look at, like I said, 8 to 12 and then probably 10 to 15. Again, we're looking at, what order is it in the program? What exercise is it? Is it machine? Is it free weight? Do I have stability? Do I have to create my own stability? Does the machine give me stability? Am I able to generate high amounts of load? Is this going to impact those things over time? And is it going to impact the next exercise afterwards? So those are all considerations that go into it. But again, if we're just looking at general data, anywhere from 5 to 30 is great for stimulating hypertrophy. It's what you're doing with that matters, and what exercises and nuances that you actually consider when you allocate those rep schemes. What does a day breakdown look like for you? I want to get into coaching. So this is something that has evolved since the day I quit my full-time job and started doing it properly. The interesting thing for me is that it took a long time to figure out how my day best works, and then figuring out how I need to work around that to fit everyone in and fit everything that we do. So obviously the job requirements have expanded exponentially since we first started, which is always the case with business that is growing. Evolution of your role should occur and things should get busier. So for us, there is a lot of systems and accountability and execution to make sure that everything happens as we need it to. I base my days on my worst case scenario. So what is the minimum things I need to get done in order to have a successful day? And then that way, if I get anything else done on top of that, I know that it's a very productive and improving day. But overall, like I like to work back on what is the minimum things that I need to get done to make sure that the company grows and that people get what they pay for, and to make sure the service and value keeps improving. So every day is different, especially during uni semester and especially during prep season. But for majority of the time, it's, we're up, getting training out of the way to start the day. I realized that I was terrible after a day's worth of computer to be at the gym. I just was not in the mindset to do it. Get out steps out of the way. So I'm pretty much from 10 o'clock in front of the computer for the rest of the day. So that'll mean we're doing check-ins, administration work, content creation, content posting, client interaction. So make sure we're reaching out to the group, reaching out to the team, make sure people are communicated with, make sure they feel connected with each other. There'll be things like that we'll probably repeat 3-4 days a week. And then there's make sure that I get all my food prepared, make sure that I get to programming days, make sure that I get any complications or issues addressed for clients within about a 24-hour window. Make sure we get back to emails, make sure we're checking for messaging. And then there's going to be a lot of ad hoc work that starts to come up. So, chasing invoices, checking payment systems, make sure programs up to date, assessing who has program changes coming up, modifying phases, modifying protocols. But then there's also the stuff like looking at research, stay up to date with new research, creating blogs, articles, things that we like to put out for educational purposes, this sort of stuff. So this is considered part of our job. I put this through as a tax expense because this is us contributing to the business, to the growth of the company, but also to our YouTube page. So things like this are part of our schedule for a specific reason, to try and grow business. I wouldn't be doing something like this if we had no intention of growing the company. So for us, it's a matter of getting more information out there, having that ability to be able to provide more information and services to other people, and be able to improve the value in the market for the coaching industry. So again, you don't have to pay to be a part of this, you just have to watch it. So for us, that's a big part of my job, is making sure that information stays out in the air and out in the wild, that everyone can just grab and take in. So a day of coaching is not just simply go to a beach, sit with with a coffee, like all the influencers try to make it look like. There's a lot of work that actually goes into it if you want to reach a certain level, and then obviously improve yourself. So yeah, it's a lot of work and a lot more than people try to make it out to be, but at the same time, it can be very easy, very fun, and very enjoyable.
Now I'm in the game, I was on the bench. First I was renting, now I'm collecting rent. First it with the Beamer, now I want the Benz. Spending all the back like here I go again. Outside says the chirp, now the camera phone. Told you I'ma keep the channels on. Why you acting different when the camera's on? Why you acting different like your paper long? 8 day wake up and I thank God. Bad decision got you wishing you could say nah. My city gritty, you could get hit any day now. On my mama, I'ma move my family way out. With some 20s, 50s, 100s, thousands.
Do you practice carbohydrate timing with your athletes? If so, why? Yes and no. Very complex answer. It depends on the athlete, depends what we're doing. Carb timing is to do with resistance-based training. So if we're talking about my bodybuilders, the more and more that someone gets into a cut, especially for prepping, what I'm trying to do is time their carbohydrates to be around their training so they're fueling adequately so we can generate better performance in the gym, which in turn is going to stimulate greater hypertrophy, which in turn is going to give us enough stimulus, or hopefully give us enough stimulus, that we can maintain muscle tissue and prevent muscle wastage and breakdown. In an off season, generally a person is more than fueled enough that carbohydrate timing is not a huge impact. It's just considering digestibility that's going to impact performance later. So yes and no. And then when it comes to other athletes like soccer players, triathlon runners, or triathlon athletes, it's considering again digestion, carb loading days earlier, hydration protocols. These sort of things start to impact our performance. As we know, the muscle cell itself has intraglycogen storage. Glycogen has intracellular hydration storage. So we're looking at how do we store adequate carbohydrates, make sure that we're fueling with effective or complex carbohydrates middle towards the end of the week, and then making sure that we're having more simpler, easy digestible carbohydrates on the day so they have rapidly available fuel sources for inevitably when that glycogen does run out, they can replenish quickly. So when we're looking at the difference between different types of athletes, yes, we do practice carbohydrate timing. It's what for and the reason why behind it that starts to kind of matter. Show day athletes are very different. Peak week protocols are very different. We're carb timing, but more so meal timing and protocol considerations to maximize the look that we want on stage, maximize fullness without spilling too much and losing condition. So it all starts to add up for various reasons. But yeah, we've done seminars, workshops, and presentations on how we have field sport athletes to eat, to load, to carbohydrate consume, to maximize their performances. For our bodybuilders, it's more about maximizing performance in the gym so they can maintain muscle tissue during a cut and make sure they're well fed to supply fuel for training. What are your tips for building a good team culture? So, depends on the team. Obviously, if we're talking like team sports, if we're talking like a business or a company team, or it's a team of people around you, there's a few things that go into it, but one of the biggest tips to building good culture is when you're picking a role, you're picking someone to fill a spot, make sure that they have a belief in the dream that you have. No one's gonna work harder than you for your dream. No one's gonna work harder than you to achieve the dream you're trying to reach. And that should be the fact. But when it comes to creating a culture, if you have people working in different directions, there is constantly going to be a pulling force or a tug in different directions. It's going to impact what the actual overall mission is and how likely it is to occur, which is then gonna lead to friction points, it's going to lead to confrontation, going to lead to issues. Having everyone understand their unique individual roles and what they bring to the team, but then also understanding that you need to have the same direction is going to be important to building and achieving good team culture, because then everyone understands that their unique abilities are to fill a gap that allows the ship to keep moving forward. If you have 5 people who all think they have the same role, or they think that they all bring that same aspect to the team, you're going to start getting conflict, you're going to start getting issues, and ego is going to start butting heads. So a big thing for me with building culture and understanding culture in your team, whether it be for business, for athletics, for a sporting team, is does each person that you are selecting, whether it be for your coaching team, whether it be for the actual playing team, whether it be for playing staff, is what's the unique ability that person brings to the team? Do they fill that role? But also, do they have that personality that is focused on the team goal? Like, yes, you can have your individual goals within that, and every person should have individual goals in the field, in the team, but collectively, do you have buy-in? If you can have a collective buy-in from an entire team, that team becomes unstoppable. It might not mean they win the grand final, but overall, the desire to improve, get better, will continue to work towards the outcome, strive to achieve that goal. And whether it be, we're trying to be a $500 million company, we're trying to be a championship winning team, I'm trying to build a roster of mentors and business savants that are going to teach me and educate me and bring me up to their level, whatever it may be, that ability to work towards the same goal and have that collective buy-in is arguably one of the most important aspects of culture. Because if you have everyone fighting and bickering about what direction we're trying to go, then you're not going to have the positive environment that facilitates that outcome. What people have to understand about culture is it's building always, regardless of whether you want it to or not. There is always going to be a good or a bad culture. If you aren't working on making it good, it is going to be bad. That's the thing. There is no on-off switch. It simply is, and how you foster it and cultivate it is going to be the determining factor for the outcome. How does training frequency affect muscle growth? So, what we gotta understand is that training itself, in a way, we are trying to elicit, or we're trying to create a stimulus that elicits hypertrophy signaling. So we're trying to achieve a specific outcome of adaptation. the old school approach of like bro training, where it used to be like, you know, one muscle group a day, just train chest, back, arms, shoulders, legs. We've got to look at that through a frequency factor and consider, if we look at a 7-day cycle in a micro, or what we call a microphase or a microcycle, is training once a week going to stimulate enough of a signal that we're going to achieve the best benefit of growth for new muscle? And for most people, the answer is no. What we have to look at is increasing the frequency of that signaling to maximize the stimulus, maximize that growth. So when we look at training frequency, the research is pretty clear that twice is better than once. So twice in a week. So instead of waiting once every 7 days to train the muscle group again, we're looking at once every 3 to 4 days, and we're going to train it again. It doesn't need to be a whole program. It doesn't mean to do like 20, 30 sets. It can be simple as a stimulus signal that occurs that could be as simple as 3 to 5 sets on another day. But ideally, twice is better than once with the consideration of total volume. So the only reason for most clients I would go above 2 is if A, we are in a specificity phase and I'm really trying to increase the growth of your shoulders, legs, arms, whatever. Or if volume is so high that it's not efficient or effective to do it on 2 days, and we need to space out some of that training volume to a 3rd day. So when we have those considerable factors and we look at those nuances, it's better to train your muscle group at least twice a week, space out over your program session, than it is to train it once. And then if your volume is increased more than enough that it's requiring a 3rd day, then you will look at increasing frequency to 3 times a week. But that's probably the best way to approach your total training frequency and to maximize hypertrophy. If you have someone that's never completed a big goal, where do you start someone who says they want to compete? This is a massive one. Because anyone that's followed my content knows that I think too many people jump into preps too early, too gung-ho, and they pull the trigger way too fast with no history of that level of intensity and what's required to achieve that outcome. I'm a big believer that is a lot of the case for most bodybuilders. For me, if someone has no history of a goal, of such a large undertaking, a large goal and actually achieving it, then we start with basically a similar scenario and we kind of de-escalate that intensity a bit. So the long-term dream, if you're working with me long-term, could be like, you know, 3 to 5 years I want to compete, 100%, let's do that. However, if you have no history of being a competitive athlete, physique-orientated, bodybuilder lifestyle, anything like that, we're going to take a step back and we're going to work towards achieving that sort of lifestyle and mental framework. So let's start with, can we actually get you lean? Can we actually spend a bit of time in a surplus? Can we do a photo shoot? Can we achieve specific numbers in your lifts? Can we go 6 months with uninterrupted behavior and goal-orientated choices? Are you ticking your boxes? Literally in the app, as you know with Matter HQ, you can actually tick the boxes. Do you have a consistent period of time for no less than 3 months of 95% adherence? Because we're going to build you up to those things, because once we pull the trigger on prep, those are bare minimums. People think they worked hard in a prep because they're like 90% accurate. Cool story, bro. That's what's expected. You're just doing the bare minimum to get on stage. So if doing the bare minimum is basically a highlight for you, which is not a bad thing, it's just recognizing you want to be ready, then we're going to spend time getting you acclimated to that process and getting adjusted to that level of expectation. So it's still working towards that massive goal, but what we're going to do is take a step back and try and give you micro goals in the process so that you get accustomed to those expectations and those behaviors, so that the large goal becomes almost easier than if we just started straight away. As I said, too many people start prep straight away with no history of being a bodybuilder or living that sort of lifestyle, and then end up blaming bodybuilding or their coach for screwing them up and messing with their health and mental health and all that sort of jazz. Most likely, you probably just should have competed to start off with. So let's build that up, let's get you accustomed to it, then we start a prep.
It ain't no thing to do my thing, it's what I did the best. I copped that crib and bought 2 chains and then I hid the rest. And it's okay to do your thing, but just don't do the most. I put my friends in that old Benz and took that to the coast. It ain't no thing to do my thing, it's what I do the best. I fill my mattress, pay my taxes, then I blew the rest. And it's okay to do your thing, but just don't do the least. I quit my boss and cooked that sauce and fed that to the streets. Sliding in bed like a wet flow.
What are the best strategies for increasing training volume without overtraining? So firstly, probably important to understand that most people don't overtrain, they under-recover. That's probably one of the biggest factors people need to recognize in the misuse of terminology, is that you're likely not overtraining, you're simply under-recovering. You're not maximizing sleep, you're not maximizing protein, you're maximizing nutrition. There's a sufficient point in time, an effective point in time in which you could probably be training more, if your recovery is lapsing, that's impacting your overall training ability. But for increasing training volume before overtraining occurs, is understand, like we can just look at like training age, training principles, we look at set allocation, total volume. So realistically, if we look at the research, you kind of want to start about 10 sets per muscle group, depending on your training block. If you're working with someone new as a coach and they haven't got a baseline understanding of their training protocols, then starting with about 10 sets per muscle group across a week is a great beginning point, depending on how you break down muscle groups, to identify their response to stimulus. Now, with consideration to their ability to train hard, so total training intensity, proximity to failure as a skill, we'll look at, from there, what are we trying to achieve? What's responding? So what you want to do is kind of gradually increase training volume up to what we call your maximum recoverable volume, which is basically where are we training to before that muscle is unable to be trained again in the next training session without a hindrance or feeling like it hasn't recovered sufficiently. So depending on the muscle group, it can go anywhere as high as like 20 to 22 sets, maybe even more sometimes, depending for a specific muscle group before you reach that upper threshold. But at the same time, we're also looking at, can we increase training competency, training intensity as a skill? So I find that most people don't need more volume, they need a greater training effectiveness, training skill set, and then we graduate their sets up. But as an easy way to approximate increase in training volume, I'll usually look at like 20% per week on the muscle groups we're trying to improve. It might be shoulder specific, back specific, quads. If they're not responding, we increase all of them until eventually get to a point where like, oh shit, my hammies are too sore to train the next session. When it comes around again, you're probably starting to identify where that maximum recoverable volume is. And that's like a set point you might use as a landmark in the future.
And it's okay to do your thing, but just don't do the most. I put my friends in that old Benz.
You've said that you worked at Nutrition Warehouse. Are there actually subs you use, or is it all hype? Look, depending on the person, what they need to achieve. I'm a big believer that when someone is in the 1%, the 1%ers matter. But for the majority of people, there's a lot of stuff I didn't sell. I used to get grief for it. I used to cop slack for it because I wouldn't push products. We used what worked, what the research supported, and what the average person might benefit from. That always did my store as well. But in saying that, there are primarily there are a few products or supplements that I do use consistently and then add in where needed based on my needs, based on the individual client's requirements, based on nutrition deficiencies and things like that. Supplementation is, as the name suggests, it should be supplementing what's missing or filling a gap. So, things like, I use pre-workouts. Everyone, they cop a lot of slack, like, oh, these products and ingredients don't work, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you're talking about the average person who's barely trains twice a week and doesn't know what 5-RAR is, sure. We're not going to say that pre-workout is going to create any massive difference, but someone like me, someone like bodybuilders, someone like elite athletes that they train pretty bloody hard, pre-workouts are great. Protein powder, easy digestibility, bioavailability of protein, complete protein profile, amino acid profile, easy to digest, ready to go, ready to digest, easy to drink, consume, add to foods, etc. Creatine's a no-brainer. Increased cell volumization, improves the efficiency of ATP. It's even starting to show some benefit to cognitive function and brain health. What else do we use? Fish oils, including EPA, DHA, as your healthy fat sources, are basically a no-brainer. The benefits that it shows in relation to things like heart health, eye health, overall joint productivity, those aspects that come from your healthy fat supply, to me is an absolute no-brainer to include those into your diet. What else do we look at? they're pretty much like they're the primary ones I'll focus on for most people. Protein, a creatine, a pre-workout, fish oils, multivitamin, because let's be real, even in the most diverse diet, most people are probably missing some form of vitamins or minerals in their consumption. So for me, I'll generally add in something like a multivitamin just to complete that profile. But then from that, one of the big things that we provide to our clients in our resource section of the app is a full evidence-based breakdown of supplementation, from muscle building to recovery, to performance, to health and well-being. So we have a full spreadsheet that recommends the evidence, what evidence is provided, and it's based on things like the ISSN position statements and examine.com, two very, very efficient and professional evidence-based sources of understanding supplementation. So that's how we kind of approach supplements. But yeah, there's not a huge amount that I push or sell or give away or encourage. I try to stick with the basics as any good coach should. Can delayed gratification be taught? Yes. There's actually a really famous child experiment. They run this test on kids. I can't remember the age. I think it's sub 8 years old. And basically what they're trying to do is identify a child's ability to delay gratification. So what they do is they will tell a child, hey, if you don't eat this marshmallow, you'll get two marshmallows later. And I don't think they explain, I don't remember if they explain how long they have to wait, but basically they're just gonna walk out of the room and leave a marshmallow in front of the kid. And if the kid can wait, basically they will double their net marshmallow and basically have two to be able to eat whenever they want. And trying to test, again, delayed gratification. Some kids have it, some kids don't, but what we can see, what we can learn over time is how to teach someone to bet on themselves. So delayed gratification is really just a gamble or a bet on a future version of you or a future outcome that you want over the outcome that you want in the present. So you're looking at, hey, can I trade this off, what I want now, for the bet that it will return something better for myself in the future that I actually want? That's really what you're doing. That's the essence of delayed gratification around goal orientation. So teaching someone in the short term to practice sacrificing is a very easy strategy to teach delayed gratification. Can you go 2 weeks without a refeed? Can you go 2 weeks of being hungry? Can you go a week of simply giving me more steps, giving me more output, getting your training sessions in the gym, getting to bed for 7 to 8 hours a night? What I'm teaching you is not just about the health aspect of sleep. It's that over time, I'm gonna be able to go back to your data and remind you, hey, remember when you doubted me? Remember when you doubted yourself and you didn't think you could get 7 hours of sleep because you were getting 5 hours a night, and now you've got 8? Now let's look at the health benefits that's come from that. Do you think there's something else we can do that is going to teach you to delay that gratification again? Yeah, probably. Because when we look at, say, a prep, that is essentially what we're doing. We are delaying the gratification of the things you want in the present, FOMO, food, social interactions, going out, drinking, whatever it might be. Now, I don't really want those things, but if that's what you want, can you delay those things and enjoy it more in a single instance, say post-comp? Can you enjoy that celebratory whiskey or wine because you finished your season and you won and you dominated, you achieved all your goals? So they guarantee that that wine tastes better when you've worked for it. That pizza or that donut tastes a million times better. Even just the one bite or the one piece will taste better than the whole pizza that you'll have at the start of prep or early in your life or in the middle of prep that you want to cheat on, because you've worked and delayed and built up to that satisfaction. So yes, over time, essentially, that is what we're doing. Every time we achieve a goal, every time we work on those micro progressions, and I have you reflect on your checkpoints, hey, you know what? We aim to be here by this point, you did it, go reward yourself. Those checkpoints are essentially you achieving delayed gratification. So in time, absolutely, we can teach that to someone with the essence of trying to understand that that is what we are doing with goal orientation and goal-focused behavior. Let's talk hamstring. So, why did the hamstring injury occur? Now, I was not rushing my reps. I was actually controlled and slow on the eccentric. It was only my second set in the session. It's the first exercise. What I genuinely think was the reason for the injury, and this is where, I've talked previously about extreme ownership and accountability, is this injury was my fault long before I got to the gym. So one of the projects we're working on the side, I'm doing some management, some consulting for a company, and we were behind on scheduling meetings. We were running late. I was rushing. We had meetings allocated for that day, and basically I delayed all of my systems and slept in, pushed my day back, started late. It was my fault. What happened was, being such an easy exercise, being such a low complexity session, meaning most of it was machine-based, I had considered, instead of taking my usual time to allocate to my warm-up and prime myself and be in the moment to focus on my training, I'd rush myself, rush my processes, and therefore rush my warm-up and put the hamstring through a range that it wasn't yet ready for to handle and be stretched through. So could have been an accumulation of under recoverability, maybe, but most likely is I didn't take the proper time to warm up. I wasn't present in my training. I was focused about trying to get training done because I had other things going on that day. My fault. It's not what I usually do. Rushed through my warm-ups, my activations, my priming, didn't do as many build-up sets as I normally would, and I just come back from a deload, wasn't thinking about my volume allocation, wasn't thinking about my set numbers, and went back to basically my last week's numbers, which was the whole point of the deload, to take a step back and be able to allow myself that progression forward. So if we look at deload, basically the idea is obviously, like 5 steps forward in your training, 2 steps back with the deload to allow you to go another 5 steps forward. The net is a positive, but you take a few steps back. For me, I just gone gung-ho, rushed myself, come straight back to a weight or resistance that I probably should have taken at least 10, 15 kilos off, and then built back up again. And all of that accumulated to me tearing a grade 2 hamstring injury. So the point here is I was accountable and I was at fault for the injury occurring. Yes, it happened at the moment, but the build-up of that injury happened long before I got to the gym and in the gym itself. So, you can look at a whole list of reasons why I might have been training wrong, whatever. It wasn't that. It was the factors that went into me being in the gym, me being present, me being here in my training, not sticking to my usual systems. And this is where, when you have your variables under control, when you have your data in place, you have your numbers, you have your systems, your processes, you can allocate and you can isolate and identify where a problem in the chain might occur. This is why being systemized is important. I can identify that, look at that and go, this was my fault, I was to blame. It happened here, here, and here, this led up to this, and as we can see, there was a compensation effect, and the compensation was that I injured myself. So when I break down and look at why it occurred, now I know that's not gonna happen again because I'm not gonna let myself do it. There might be a different reason why I get injured, but it's not gonna be that. Because I can see that I was at fault, it was my fault, it was me that was to blame for it, and now we just accept it, move forward, get into my rehabilitation, and don't allow it to happen again.
It ain't no thing to do my thing, it's what I did the best. I copped that crib and bought 2 chains and then I hid the rest. And it's okay to do your thing, but just don't do the most. I put my friends in that old Benz and took that to the coast. It ain't no thing to do my thing, it's what I do the best. I feel my mattress, pay my taxes, then I...
Something else people need to consider when injuries occur. See a lot of people, whether it be illness, sickness, injuries, problems. We start to look outwards. We start to look at blame. We start to get resentful, spiteful, hate life, etc. And we stop thinking like athletes. We stop thinking like professionals. And we start pointing fingers. One of the best things, or the biggest things that you can do as an athlete, especially if you're trying to progress in your sport, trying to progress in life, trying to get better, improve your business, whatever you're doing. Instead of doing this, you need to start doing this and look at, okay, acceptability first and foremost. acceptance that this has happened. I can't change that the hamstring injuries occurred. I can't change that I didn't prime myself effectively. I can't change that I wasn't warmed up properly to do the lift. That's happened. The first thing is to practice acceptance and move forward. Nothing I complain about, stress about, or worry about now is going to change that it happened. I had the same process when I hurt my back and ended up with my spinal diagnosis. Nothing I can do can make that guy less in that car that runs into me and causes the accident. What I am in control of and what I can focus on is my mentality, my next actions, and how I approach my rehab and recoverability. What are the things that are in my immediate box of control? What is the list of things that's outside my control? Write that list out, throw it away. I cannot control those things. There is no point placing energy there and stressing myself. As an athlete, as a coach, as a business owner, whatever you want to call yourself, the immediate thing to do is figure out what is the next course of action for you, what do you have direct control over, and how do you get to work on that. You can sit in the hospital bed, you can sit on your couch, you can sit in your bed in your bedroom, and you can complain, you can watch TV, you can get spiteful, resentful, you can get lazy, you can get agitated, you can start to point the finger and blame life. Or you can create that list, you can start to look at what you can do, and you start to put things in action that are going to move you forward and get back to your normal process as fast as possible. To me, that's one of the biggest indicators of a growth mindset, and one of the biggest indicators of a successful athlete is their ability to recognize that and just simply get to work. The same competitive athletic mindset that you take to your sport is how I would take to any problem or obstacle or injury that occurs, and how quickly you can get into actioning and fixing and figuring out the problem and then move on. Alrighty guys, so that is the end of our upper arms and shoulder session. Like I said, there's not going to be much intensity to hamstrings for the next 3 to 4 weeks. I'm going to really allocate the competitiveness and the intensity I take to my normal training business to my rehabilitation, put my faith in tech and SCAF to nail my protocols, and basically just put into action, implement everything they say at 110%, so that I know that I've maximized every possible avenue to get back on my feet, get my hamstrings correct, and be able to maximize the rest of my off season, so that I can really benefit my training before we get into prep in about 13 or 14 weeks time. The main thing, like I said, is when these obstacles, when these injuries occur, it's important to look at what you're in control of. It's important to look at what you can do and make sure that you are actioning these things instead of worrying about what you can't do, being spiteful, hating the fact that it's happened, and developing a resentful mentality. You can't change it's occurred, accept it, move on, move forward, get to work at improving and fixing yourself, and get back on your feet as fast as possible. If you need help with that, if you need help with building that mindset, if you need help with taking control of those aspects, figuring out what you're in control of, reach out and book in a consult, because that is the type of coaching that I do. It's the type of coaching that I preach. It's the type of coaching that our system is built towards. It's about building the best version of you long-term and optimizing your life, optimizing your factors that are going to produce the best outcome and give you the best chance of achieving the goal that you want. We are taking clients, remember prep, we're looking at least 12 months out. So if you're looking at season B next year, if you're looking at season A 2026, now is the time to start working with us and book it in. Not so that I take your money, because that is going to give me the best chance of giving you a result long-term and maximizing your time on stage or your time in your craft or field. So look at the long-term potentiation that comes with good coaching. That is what we're trying to achieve. It is my best interest and your best interest to get a great result. That requires time. So book in a free consult, have a free chat, download and digest a whole bunch of our free data and free content, free information. I'd rather you have all of that than even work with me in the first place. Take your time, watch it, go through it, book in the call, and let's get to work, because the best result that you're going to build for stage is going to happen now, not 12 weeks out from your show. So book that in, and we'll see you next month.